Welcome, Gaby Sambuccetti.
Hello. Okay, so thank you to my friends, Ahmed, Shamim. You were incredible patient today because I was on a traffic jam and it took me like 4 hours to arrive here from Oxford. So thank you to Luciano who was driving. Today I have a PowerPoint presentation, but I'm not sure if is it possible to see?
We can try.
We can try, okay. Because I think there was a technical thing, but it looks like it's sorted.
2 seconds.
2 seconds. Okay, so I'm going to start by saying that I was trying to look for Latin American movements that I could compare with the poetry of Jibanananda, and I was trying to find movements that could be similar in Latin America, but it was very hard because he's a very unique poet, even in his own culture. So it was quite difficult to find movements, and so there was a moment while I was preparing this that I just stopped looking for big movements, and I started to look at poets, particular poets, and I found Alejandra Pizarnik, who is an Argentine poet. Is one of my favorite poets, actually. And I think Alejandra and Jibanananda had many things in common. So that's my presentation is about that. And
We're ready.
you're ready? Okay.
Just a second, Gaby.
Okay. Meanwhile, I would like to thank you again to Saudha who, for inviting me, Ahmed, Shamim, David Lee Morgan, he's over there, Luciano.
Sorry, Gaby, not working this one. Sorry for that.
No worries.
Gaby, it's not working. Will you be able to do just like a non-visual presentation?
Okay, I will try to do it in a non-visual way. It's hard, but I will try. Okay, so Alejandra and Jibanananda, they share. So I found some similarities. For instance, they share almost the same time period. So Jibanananda, he was born in about 1900, and Alejandra Pizarnik in 1936. So they show a similar period, so similar context. They both were considered unique poets of their time. So both of them were difficult to classify.
It's working.
Then,
It's working now. Gaby, it's working.
It's working, great. Okay, so here we have similarities. So next slide, please.
Bear with me, I cannot hear the videos.
Great. Okay, so they share, as I was saying, they share a similar time period. And another coincidence, another similarity that I found is that, it's in the next slide, they are unusual poets, as I was saying, and the next slide, sorry. This is going to be hard. Both of them, I found that both of them travel a lot. So Jibanananda, he traveled to Delhi, Calcutta, very sad, back and forth during his whole life. So he was someone who traveled a lot. And on the other side, Pizarnik, the Argentine poet, she also traveled a lot because she went from Buenos Aires to Paris, and then she went from Paris to Buenos Aires, and then she went from Buenos Aires to New York, and then New York, Paris. She had 2 scholarships, so she traveled a lot during her lifetime, and then she unfortunately died in Buenos Aires. Another coincidence that I found, which is in the next slide, is that both of them had difficulties to be open, to socialize, to have friends. They both of them, they had some. They felt alone, very deeply lonely. They felt a deeply loneliness. They felt that they couldn't fit, and they were both very shy. But the coincidence that is probably the one that is most important for today is the next one. So both of them they try to commit suicide. Apparently, both of them committed suicide by the end of their lives. So on October 22, Jibanananda died. The witness says that so he was hit by a tram car, but the witness said that though the tram car whistled, he did not stop and got struck. So they said it was not an accident, it was an attempt at suicide. And on the other hand, Alejandra Pizarnik, she was suffering depression and anxiety during her whole life. And in 1972, she took a whole bag of secobarbital, which are these pills. They are for anxiety disorders, and he took the whole bag, and he died. So she committed suicide, and this, which is part of their personal life and biographies, was also we can also sense this relationship with death in their own poems and in their poetry books. And there are tensions between death and life. And what is important that I found in both poets, and is what I'm going to analyze today in particular, is that for both poets, reality was a sort of dark space, and we can only access reality through our perception. So for Jibanananda Das, this the way to access reality was through perception. In Alejandra Pizarnik, it's also through perception and subjectivity, but in Alejandra Pizarnik, language is more important to access reality. So in the next page, there are 2 poems that I brought today. So we have the first one. It says, "I live amongst all, yet alone I am, the only one to be blinded by the light, puzzled by the many ways open before me." And then next to it there is a poem by Alejandra Pizarnik, and it says, this is a translation that I made for today. It says, "You cry below, you're crying. You open the box of desires, and you are richer than the night. But today, with solitude being so unbearable, even worse, commit suicide." Okay, so I highlighted the important parts. So I live amongst all, yet alone I am, blinded by the light. And then he talks about a puzzle. Do you have any idea what this means? in the first poem, what do you think that means? That he's blinded by the light, puzzled by the many ways open before me. Anyone would like to say what do you think that means? Anyone would like to try? No? Okay, so for him, it was very important. Perception was very important. But the thing about perception is that there are many ways to perceive things. So reality is something that we can access, but through different lenses, because all of them we can perceive different things. In the case of Alejandra, we can say we can see here that he says today solitude is so unbearable that even worse commit suicide. So reality is becoming so dark that I need words, and even words are feeling this darkest side of reality. So for Alejandra, there is a twist. So language is important to perceive this reality. But in the other case, we have a sense of sadness because reality cannot be. We cannot access reality because as we cannot access it as a whole, we cannot access it because we can only access a part of it. So in the next slide, so in both poets, we have a sense that reality is sometimes a dark space unable to be objectified, which is also sensitive to perception and subjectivity. So in Pizarnik's, from Pizarnik's view, language is not enough to contain reality, but in Jibanananda does, sometimes truth or reality is void, and void is darkness. Okay, so then I have another poem that I brought today, which is in the next slide. So, somewhere death will come to me, cover me with the gentle fragrance of grass. At dawn or at night, or a bird at mid-afternoon will take me to its bosom, cover me like grass. The night sky will blossom into blue stars. And then we have Alejandra. Death is a word is a thing, then death is a thing, then death is a thing, like a poetic body from the place where I was born. Okay, so what do you think about this description of death as, so it says, death will come to me, cover me with the gentle fragrance of grass. What do you think about that? What do you think about that description? Please tell, someone just said something. So,
death,
yes, there.
Death means that, like grass is everywhere. So it's very common.
Yeah, that's a very nice interpretation. So it's everywhere. And what else? What else do you think? What do you think about the gentle fragrance of grass?
It's very peaceful.
It's very peaceful. Yeah, that's right. It's very peaceful. But it's like a very nice image of death. Like other people will say that like death is a dark place, or it's something horrible, or it's something sad. But he's saying something very nice, like it's the gentle fragrance of grass. On the other side, we have Alejandra. Death is a word. A word is a thing. What do you think about that? Have you ever thought about death as a thing? So it's a very particular way to see death. In the next slide, we have a critic from Bangladesh called Biswar Das, and he says something like, why someone will die happy and feeling blessed. That could be seen as absurd. That could be seen as something that doesn't make sense. But he says that he will never write something linear and rational in relation to perception, because that can limit us, that can limit our consciousness. So if we think in death, if we all in this room think that death is the same thing, then we are limiting ourselves. We are just seeing one thing of reality. So conceiving reality, so there is a bright side of having different perceptions. And that bright side is that we all can enrich the view of reality by going to the extremes. So seeing death as something nice could be something that open a path in the way we see reality. In the case of Pizarnik, death is also relative because we can only access and understand it through language. So they are very similar. The only thing that is different is how we access this reality. So in the next page, I have 2 more poems that are quite similar. I will just read a couple of verses. So it says, "When I'm dead, shall I ever come back to earth again?" And then we have in Pizarnik, "Talk. You will never be able to make a circle around death. You can talk, but only about ashes." So again, it's the same thing. So we cannot access death. Like, death could be 1,000 things, but we can do a circle around death. Talk, but from the bottom of the river in which the death is singing. So we can see in Pizarnik as well a very original way to see death. Death is singing. So in the next page, or in the next slide, we have, for both poets, reality is accessible only through perception and language, and besides the dramatic views on reality, because don't forget that both of them were very depressed, or in a way, not very optimistic poets about the way they see reality. But they were very courageous in their perceptions and poems, and they confronted the consciousness limitations by thinking outside the box. And finally, I brought one of my favorite poems by Pizarnik. It's in the next slide, and it says, "In your feet where swallows die because they are shivering, awaiting the future, and yet you can still tell that there are waves from the ocean, moistening those few words that make life worth to be lived." For me, what is very important to rescue about Pizarnik is that life, there are words that makes life better. So even if reality is very dark, and even if reality is unbearable, we still have words, and with words we can still change and transform reality. And through our own perception, we can not only have a better reality, but also we can extend and stop limiting our consciousness through language. And I think I would like to, so there is another slide, that's the last one. And another one, sorry. So there is the last one. That is the most important one. Well, it's fine if you cannot find it. It says thank you to Saudha, Rich Mix, the Gronthee, and Radha Raman Society for doing this, and you make possible to also, by doing these events and festival, you make possible to come back to poetry and to come back to all this work to improve the way we see reality. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gaby Sambuccetti, for a unique presentation. Our next performance is, like I